Good afternoon, Saitlanders. How are you? We hope that you're well. I know I look a little bit ragged. I've been in the rain. It's raining here in Van der Kloof. We've had a fair amount of rain over the past few weeks, and that is very, very good. It does our gardens and our fruit trees and our herb gardens and vegetable gardens, the power of good. And if you've never witnessed it yourself, it is quite remarkable to see the advantage or the benefit of rain versus tap water. How much more effective rain is in nourishing, if that's the right word, plants. A small amount of rain versus a large amount of tap water. It's been an eye-opener for me, I'll tell you what. Excuse me. And so I've been in the rain doing a couple of things. Quickly, I had to pack some stuff in my bucky. I've got to meet Mr. Miller just now and give that stuff to him. I want to talk to you quickly about the expropriation without compensation matter, because a few people have asked me about it in recent days. And the long and the short of it is this, that in 1999, if I'm not mistaken, the land claims, redistribution of land began with the addressing of historical claims. Now, those of you who were paying any attention, or those of you who speak a black language, or those of you who, I don't know, occasionally see a traditionally black newspaper at work and have a glance at it, will know that for years and years and years, the government publicized that process in every possible channel. It was in radio advertisements and in newspapers, and the government even sent out little, what is the right word, like a mobile office to rural areas to assist people to make land claims. As a result, the take-up was practically 100%. It is fair to assume that every black family, clan, and or tribe in South Africa that had a just, in terms of the law, in terms of what the ANC believes to be right versus wrong, that had a just claim, was able to submit it. Nobody was overlooked, whether they were literate or illiterate, whether they were able to fill in the land claims online, or whether they did them in these mobile offices, whether they did them at a local department of land reform, agriculture and land reform, whether they went in person or they sent. Every conceivable land claim was submitted and addressed. Afgehandel is the word that comes to mind. It was disposed of. And therefore, one could say that the process was utterly completed forever. And it ended in roughly 2017, if I remember correctly. Now, of course, we all know that many of those land claims were shambolic, that in 92.7% of cases, according to Dr. Anthea Jeffrey, who is the foremost authority in South Africa on this, I would say, apart from one other guy whose name I can't think of, In 92.7% of cases, the land claims applicants, the claimants, opted to take money in lieu of the land. That's not to say that the claim wasn't handled successfully. It was handled successfully. But because this is the generally accepted perception of it, because these black land claimants didn't really want the land, in spite of the propaganda of the African National Congress and the Azanian People's Organization and the Pan-Africanist Congress and the Economic Freedom Fighters, the people didn't really want the land. So they took the money. Therefore, nothing changed, or very little changed, in terms of land ownership demographics in South Africa. Therefore, in 2018, if I remember correctly, the subject was brought up again. It was rejuvenated. It was revivified. It was revitalized. It was new energy, and new life was breathed into it. And at that time, there was an enormous failure by the influential non-governmental organizations of South Africa to call the lie about it. In other words, the sanctimonious liberals signally failed to say, whoa, it's well and good that black people should own land. We all want that. We, liberals, and you, the ANC. But you've already completely handled all of the outstanding historical land claims in South Africa. And besides that, Mr. Government, much as perhaps a land ownership is not what we would like it to be, you are speaking as if black people have no land, whereas in fact they own all of the land of the Bantustans. Now you might say, well, the Bantustans only form... Yes, but it adds to the picture. It is a portion of the discussion that is being left out. For instance, did you know that in Natal, KwaZulu-Natal, goodness me, I can't think of the name of the... Oh, dear me. The Zulu kingdom owns something like 40% and has always owned and possessed something like 40% of the land in Natal. I've got two figures coming to mind. The one is 37% and the other is 42%. I'm not sure of myself. And that's completely besides commercial farmland. Farmland where the black people have gotten through the land restitution process, through the land claims process, through the first phase of the land reform process. Nobody spoke like that. And so this thing was rejuvenated and new life was breathed into it. Now, sorry, I just want to point something else out to you. 24% of South Africa's land is owned by the state. So if you ever hear a liberal liar or the government say that, let's say for instance, white people own 40% of South Africa's land, it's not 40% of 100, because they're implying whites own 40%, blacks own 60%, or whites own 60%, blacks own 40%. In fact, the white, black, Indian, colored ownership profile excludes 24%. It's only 76% that is in the reckoning. But the state never mentions that. And black people own roughly, I think it's 34, 35 or 34.5% of South Africa's land. That's a fact. Now, I'm not saying that by African National Congress standards it should be that. And obviously they're going to act according to their norms and values and mores. All I'm saying is that that's where it stands, and into that conversation you have to include the many millions of hectares which were successfully claimed over the 18, 17, 19, 16-year process, whatever it was, the long process that was completed. You have to include in that conversation the millions of hectares of land which black people were effectively awarded, but which they traded for money. It has to count. How can it not? Right, so we are here today with this rejuvenated process, which, as you will understand, I'm trying to imply, is a false process, because it doesn't take into account the facts of the argument. Namely, the land already owned and the land successfully claimed but given up for money. Okay, so 2 days ago, today's the 9th, I'm getting mixed up now. Was it the 7th? I believe it was the 7th or the 6th, Monday or Tuesday of this week of Thursday, the 9th of December. The National Assembly, the Parliament, our Parliament, voted on amending Section 25 of the Constitution. Now, what does that mean? What it is that a couple of years ago, the Parliament voted on reviewing Section 25 and on examining the possibilities for expropriation without compensation. And it was approved, so they put a committee together. That committee went away and did its work. And there was a dispute within the committee between the African National Congress and the EFF over one critical point, which we will come to in a minute. So the committee came and presented its work, although its work had been interrupted by this dispute. And it came time to vote on whether or not to amend the portion of the Constitution which is perceived by some people to be a legal obstacle to creating an expropriation without compensation law. Imagine this. You and I reach an agreement to sell children into slavery. Big, thick agreement like this, contract like this, thick as a telephone directory, covering every angle. And we proceed to engage in child slavery. And the police come along and say, you're not allowed to do this, come with us. You're under arrest. You're going to stand trial. And we say, no, but there was a legitimate contract between us. That contract is invalid, it is null and void. Because the law doesn't provide for it, or the law actively prohibits it. Similarly, you can, now of course there's the comparison with squatter camps that's going to come up in everybody's minds, but just let's leave that legal anomaly out for a second. Let's say you decide to establish a township, a resort, a scheme on a piece of land somewhere. And you and your friends build 50 houses, and somebody objects to it. And you say, no, but they're good contracts. We have good contracts here. Yeah, but you weren't allowed. Whether you feel that you've got good contracts between people in good faith, you are not allowed to simply establish a township wheresoever you like. End of story. In the same way, they cannot bring in an expropriation without compensation law if there is no opportunity for it legally. If there, in the Constitution, there is an obstacle to such a law existing, just as under law there is an obstacle to me selling children into slavery. There is an obstacle which would have to be removed first before I could establish a township without permission, without it being gazetted, without it being done in conjunction with the local municipality or the district municipality, without it being done according to the standards set down scores of years ago. Right. So what happened 3 days ago was they voted only on one thing, and that is the amendment to this obstacle, Section 25 of the Constitution, to amend it so that it doesn't prohibit and prevent the concept of child slavery or the concept of townships on whatever land. I'm using silly examples now, so that it doesn't prevent the concept, the legal concept being created of expropriation without compensation. I hope that I'm saying this well. You know, sometimes you wonder what impression people are going to get of the way that you spoke to them through a video. I'm trying my damnedest to clarify something which people seem to struggle to understand. And I may or may not be doing a good job of that. I'm doing the best that I can. Right. So that failed. That vote in the Parliament on whether or not Section 25 of the Constitution should be amended failed to be passed. Why? Because it requires a 2/3 majority, not a simple majority. What is a simple majority? A simple majority in anything in life is half plus 1. Half plus 1 is a simple majority. Now, in this case, because it's an amendment to the Constitution, it requires a 2/3 majority. And the ANC needed the support of the economic freedom fighters in order to garner enough votes to pass that proposed amendment to Section 25. And the EFF refused to support the ANC because the EFF is afraid that if the process goes ahead, in other words, if they support it, it will be conducted or executed in terms of which the EFF does not approve. So, let's say you and I and some friends, 10 of us, are going to have a braai. And we figure out that we need 200 rands worth of meat and that each of us should put in $20. I might say, I don't eat pork. And I much prefer lamb to beef. And I know that if I give you 20 rand, vrachtig, you're going to spend it on pork with some beef. And I'm not going to get what I want. So therefore, I'm not going to support your collection of 20 rand, 20 rand, 20 rand to go and buy meat. I'm going to go and buy my own meat. Similarly, the EFF is not opposed to having a braai. The EFF is not opposed to land reform. The EFF just doesn't want to support the ANC because it will be done in a way that the EFF disagrees with. And what is that way? The ANC believes in land tenure, in I beg your pardon, not land tenure. I can't think of the name, but where you own your land, not land tenure. I'm having a brain freeze. Property rights. The EFF does not. The EFF is saying, if land is expropriated from Simon Roche without compensation, that land must become the property of the state. It mustn't be given to Vusi Makubela, or it mustn't be given to the Makubela family, or to the Makubela clan, or to the Zulu tribe, or whatever. It must remain forever the property of the state, which is a reflection of the EFF's Marxist roots. So, the EFF said, we would rather see nothing happen, in other words, that the Section 25 of the Constitution not be amended in order for it to not be an obstacle to a later law for expropriation without compensation. We'd rather see the whole thing fail, which it did. And that is the long and the short of it, ladies and gentlemen. The only other thing worth mentioning is that this is not over by a long shot. You know, land redistribution is a feature of the African National Congress's manifesto. So they can't escape it. Quite besides the fact, over and above the fact that the left wing of the African National Congress is utterly devoted to land reform, land expropriation. Quite besides that, even the middle and the right wing of the ANC are forever going to be held to the standard of land reform in the ANC's manifesto. They're not going to be able to escape it. And of course, there's going to be forever pressure from the economic freedom fighters. The economic freedom fighters are always going to be able to use the masses to drag the ANC leftwards on this matter. They're always going to be able to say to the masses, you can't plant a few millies as your forefathers did 1,000 years ago, which is rubbish because maize comes from South America. And so it was only discovered after 1492 when Christopher Columbus first discovered, well, not really first, but in simple terms, first discovered South America for Europe. So, but anyway, you can't plant some sorghum because the African National Congress is denying you the right that your forefathers had to put a few seeds in the ground and to enjoy the fruits of the earth as nature intended. You, black man, are being robbed. You know the tone in which all of these conversations are conducted. It is a tone of emotional blackmail. That's the term that's used in psychology, as a matter of interest. So the thing is not going to go away. It will come again. And please God, it will be hampered and hindered, and it will fail again and again and again, because it is, after all, based upon a false argument. Namely, the argument that the black people of South Africa have no land and the whites have practically all of it. And the argument that neglects to mention that, in fact, a 16 or 17 or 18-year-long land redistribution process based upon valid historical claims was completed already. Okie dokes, everybody. Thank you for your patience in listening to this long story. I hope I did some justice to the inquiries I've been receiving from many of you. Take very good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.